Everybody comes into a relationship at different levels. You definitely attract what you are. And I believe that that is for your learning curve. The best news is if you learn something from it, great. But too often people just jump from face to face to face.
Yeah.
And they don't allow that time to learn and grow from it, because everybody has some growing period.
All right. So Tina Marx is here with us today. She is a certified holistic coach. She has a master's degree in metaphysical counseling, and she's also received her second year Science of Mind certification. She's been studying and practicing the teachings of metaphysics, spirituality, and Eastern philosophies for more than 22 years. And she's a single parent. And she's also the host of an amazing podcast I love to watch called Transparent with Tina. So I'd love to welcome Tina today. Thank you for being on the show.
Yay. Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here, Jenna. Thank you for having me.
It's my pleasure. So today we wanted to talk a little bit about relationships. You actually wrote a book. I meant to mention you're also an author, and you wrote a book called Into You and Me, I See. And
intimacy, and it's intimacy : Into You and Me, I See. Yeah.
Yeah. And so what is the book about? It's, to me, I think it's all about relationships and being intimate in relationships, which is something that, of course, I have always wanted. But looking back in my last relationship, I realized that I wasn't as vulnerable as I should have been. And so while I was craving intimacy, I don't know how intimate we really could have gotten if I was not willing to be vulnerable, which is a really important aspect, I would think, of being intimate in a relationship.
Yeah, you can't be intimate with somebody if you're not vulnerable. So then you kind of have to go a little bit deeper and go, why can't I be vulnerable, right? And so first thing, all cliches have, any known cliches have a reason behind that, right? So you have to first love yourself first. You have to be intimate with yourself first. And you have to really embrace not just the beautiful sides that, you love to show to the world, but, in my book, I talk about our shadow selves. And those are the areas that we need to work on. Those are the areas that, we often shun and turn our backs on, but they're just there because they are in need of the greatest healing. And until you accept all parts of yourself, you can't be, completely intimate or vulnerable with somebody else. Because think about it this way: if you haven't accepted yourself first, okay, how are you going to be able to let somebody else in and see that?
Yeah,
right?
That makes sense. Yeah. So what is a shadow? What is your shadow self?
Your shadow self is anything that maybe you carry guilt around or shame about, or, things that, like I said, that need work on, the pain that resides in all of us. I mean, all of us have that. We all have experiences and trauma that has happened to us. And if we have not worked through that and healed it, it still lays within our body. Our body has, you've heard of, body recognition, body, memory. If you have an emotion that you haven't healed and it's still in your body, it can lay dormant. And the minute it gets a chance, it will rear its head. And have you ever been in a relationship? You're like, okay, I got it. I've been single a long time. I've been doing a lot of work on myself. I've got it this time. And then the minute you get in a relationship, all of a sudden it's like the mirror is being held up. And it's like, oh my God, it's like your confidence just walked out the door. And that's why we often put on these masks and inauthentic selves, right? We don't really, because we haven't embraced that part of ourselves.
Interesting.
But the best test is by getting in a relationship, because you can do it all day long by yourself, but and you're smart. And you probably
well, because that's what I'm a little bit worried about. I've taken quite a bit of a break from my last relationship, which turned a bit toxic, and I learned a lot about myself through that last relationship. I came to find, I did this journaling exercise where I was journaling out all the things that I thought I needed from him, right? Like, I need him to value me more. I need him to show me more love. And the list went on. And I did this exercise where I turned it around on myself. Have you ever heard of that? Is that a thing? Is that what you teach some of your clients to do?
Well, as I was hearing that, it's like, you just, instead of saying he needs to do this more,
yeah,
you need to show, it sounds to me like you need to show yourself more love. You need to value yourself more, right? Because if you give it to yourself, nobody can disturb your peace of mind and joy. They can't. You would look at it and say, you know what? This is great, but it's not at my level. Everybody comes into a relationship at different levels. You definitely attract what you are. And I believe that is for your learning curve. Okay. Yeah. So the best news is if you learn something from it, great. But too often people just jump from face to face to face.
Yeah.
And they don't allow that time to learn and grow from it, because everybody has some growing period to show from it.
I never took the time to reflect back on the old relationships and say, what can I learn from it that I don't want to carry on into the next relationship? About myself as well. I knew, I don't want a person like that, but I never did the inner work to find, looking at it from the perspective of the relationship is a reflection of myself, really. And that is a game changer, because if you don't look at it like that, you're just going to keep repeating the same thing over and over again because you don't do the work.
You've heard of the term projection, right?
Yes, of course.
So everything you were feeling you were just projecting about your own life. You weren't giving yourself enough love.
Yeah.
Right. And that's oftentimes it's always the other person, because it's easier to point the finger at somebody else.
Yeah.
And if it's something that you're lacking out of that person, I mean, oftentimes it can be that way. It can be that person is just not, I don't even like to say on your level, but we all go through our growths at different periods, and we're all at different levels,
Yeah.
So if somebody has not done any work on themselves, but that's not where it becomes toxic. It becomes toxic when you resist understanding where that's coming from. And you got it. You like, okay, I think, I don't know your situation, but oftentimes it becomes toxic is when we are not willing to embrace that we're part of the problem.
Yeah.
Or
maybe, my goodness. That was me. That was really me.
Yeah, exactly.
We think we're justified because this other person behaved a certain way, and that was the problem. And then, of course, me thinking that I wasn't getting the love that I needed, I wasn't feeling valued. That seems like justification to blame the other person, doesn't it?
Exactly. You know what the whole thing is that we're always looking out there for the answers, including this. Okay. Yeah. And what we need to do is look inward. If we look inward more, the answers are all inside of us. I really do believe that.
I believe that too.
Yeah. And people are like, if I only had a boyfriend, if I only had this, if I only had that, create that environment inside of yourself first and come into this, and they say 50-50. No, it's 150. I mean, it's like come in as a whole. You don't have half a person, make a whole person. You make a whole person, it makes a whole person.
I love that.
It's scary. I love that. It's scary to be vulnerable. It really is.
It really is. Yeah.
But if you love yourself and you're doing all the work for yourself and on yourself, it becomes less scary. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, if you embrace the fact that we're not perfect, I mean, that's the thing. I think we think that we're supposed to be perfect.
Right.
And nobody's perfect. If we were perfect, we wouldn't be here anymore. We would be upstairs. Right? Because our work here is to work on our character flaws.
Yeah.
So
do you believe that? Because I believe that too, that we're here on earth to really learn our lessons and figure ourselves out and love ourselves, really. And everything else is just a bonus. But it's really about our evolution as a soul.
Yeah. It's about being the best person that you can possibly be, living into your full potential. I mean, I really believe that that's why God created us. We are here to create businesses, create family, create relationships to the best of our ability. And you know what? You're not going to get it right the first time. And I don't know why we have this misconception thinking, we're going to get it right off the bat. I mean, life is a classroom. It's a continuation. And I think this is another misconception. It's like, I got it now. I'm just going to park it. No, that's where the pain and the struggling comes in. You see what I'm saying? And I think, we're always trying to get to that level where we don't have to work that hard anymore. Well, if you stop growing, I just heard, I think it was Grant Cardone in his book said, or it might have been Joyce Meyer, I get everybody mixed up, but they said, you don't have to die, you don't have to grow old to die. There's a lot of people that are already dead and they're still living. Does that make sense? It's like finding the courage, everything, whether it's a relationship or it's your job or anything. There are things that are really, really scary, and they get more scary the more you don't look at it, the more you avoid it, the more you turn your back on it.
Tell me about it.
Yeah. And your insecurities work the same way. So the more you say, I don't have those, I don't want to look at that because it's like, makes me feel sick to myself that I am that way. And then we label ourselves. That's the worst. We label ourselves. I'm a bad person. I'm lazy. I can't do it. And then when you start doing it, you start to feed your mind that, and your mind starts to accept it. And then that's what starts to show up in your life.
100%. I love what you said there. So dead on. I mean, vulnerability is something that it's hard when you're coming from a traumatic background. I'm sure you experience this a lot with your clients. I have a traumatic background, a lot of trauma. So not that I ever became a victim out of it. I became really strong. So I went into the opposite mode. And I think, and it was my survival skill, really. And I think because I came through so strong that I saw it as an attribute and not something that I should look at, like I need to change that. But then I realized recently, not too long ago, that when I did go through relationship coaching specifically, not counseling, but relationship coaching brought that out, that I needed to work on vulnerability. And I never had even seen that as an issue. So now, like I mentioned, my list of, hey, I wasn't getting in my last relationship the intimacy I needed. Well, how is he going to be intimate with me if I don't allow him to know me well enough to have that intimate connection?
Exactly. At least you understand that, and I went through a lot of trauma. And so I totally identify with what you're saying. I went through a lot of trauma. And, when you're a child and you go through trauma, that is a survival skill. You're either not going to make it or you're going to rise to the occasion. And, basically I built a fortress around me. So I remember a psychologist I was seeing, I don't know, in my 20s, I think, that said, you mind me like of a metal tank. It's like nobody can get in there. I mean, your walls are so thick. In fact, when I was thinking about this, because I was thinking about this interview, and I remember I went to Barbara DeAngelis, used to be, I don't know if she's still practicing. She has many books. She's amazing. And I was 21, 22, and it was called Making Love Work. It was a seminar. It was a 3-day seminar. And, I didn't know what I was in for. My brother's like, he had just gone through it, and he's like, you need to go do this. And the exercises are powerful. I mean, they're asking you to really open up your heart and just let it all out. And the monitors are going around to all the different groups. And I just would not let myself cry. And one of them tapped me on the shoulder and whispered in my ear, if you don't start crying, you're going to hurt yourself. Because that's how much I just could not let it out, because I was condemned for that by my father. What are you doing crying? Right? So you have to take in consideration and love yourself back into a healthy space. So here's the deal. That was not your responsibility. That was something that happened to you. But to still make it your story as an adult when you have different opinions. So it got you through. It was your survival mechanism. But now it's our choice to go, I can still be there. And I write in my book, a closed door is a closed door. So yes, you keep love out. I mean, you keep pain out, but you also keep love out. Right. So it's a very lonely existence. So for somebody like you and I that went through that, and we're really strong women, we have to learn how to be vulnerable. On the other hand, there are people that wear their heart on their sleeves and they're so vulnerable, and they're just grabbing on, for like a life jacket. Okay. So, I don't, which one's better, pick and choose your poison, right? But everybody has their issues to go through. So that's why, I say, if you have the time, unless there's somebody that really interests me at this point, I just keep putting the work back into myself. Where my younger Tina would spend that energy trying to find somebody else. And we're like, that was really
Same here.
Yeah, put it back into yourself. If you want Mr. Right, become Mrs. Right, right?
Yeah.
Elevate yourself.
Yeah.
Elevate.
Yeah.
Elevate.
Yeah, totally. No, I completely agree. And I'm in that mode right now. Once I realized all those things that I was looking for in my last relationship, I was needing from me, that meant I had a lot of work to do that I hadn't really been focusing on doing. And I had really looked for my that other person to fulfill me, to be that other half. You were mentioning, it's not 50-50. You have to come to it 100% whole yourself already. And I was only half full.
I don't care what that person's giving you. It's never going to be enough if you haven't given it to yourself, because you might say, this is what I need. I need more quality time. Then they'll give you more quality time. Well, now I need you to be a better provider. I mean, that poor person is never going to be able to do enough because it's an endless well. I mean, it will never be enough. You get my drift, because it really all has to come from inside.
100%. So I'm curious to know, how often do you see this in your work? Does this come up a lot with people who have had failed relationships and perhaps have had trauma in the past? Have they had a issue being vulnerable?
Yeah. And, I just get them to the next level and get them to understand their worth, okay, by exercises. Also, something that's really important to recognize is that triggers, we're talking about our trauma in our childhood, okay? And this was a really aha moment for me, because I interviewed John Simple Paris, who is like a psychologist. He's very well known for anxiety and trauma and things like that. And I asked him the question. Actually, I asked Tim Story this too.
I saw that interview, by the way. Amazing. He's awesome. And you were a great interviewer. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. So we were talking about triggers, right?
Yeah.
And I don't know if you remember that question, because to me, I was always confused. I'm going, is this a trigger or is this my intuition? Because I'm highly intuitive.
Yeah.
I mean, where it's like the alarm bells are going off going, get out. Okay. So my last relationship, that happened, and it was like something came over me and I just had to end it. I couldn't wait 24 hours. It's just like something that was just invaded my body. Alarm bells were like the house was burning down. And then the next day or the day after, I thought, well, and I'm kind of second guessing. It's just not the first time. In fact, one of my closest friends, who is a dear friend of mine, he's a coach, and he's not a hired coach, but he's a friend of mine. He said, Tina, what you do is you like murder the relationship, and then you think about it after, and then you try to resuscitate it. And I'm like, that is so true, Yeah. So I asked him, when I said to Tim, I said, what's the difference between intuition and a trigger?
A trigger, yeah.
24 hours. He says, if you're still feeling the same way in 24 hours, but we have to understand that, oh, that person's a bad person now. They made me feel that way. How could they say that? How could they do it? They're going through their own things too. So that's always been something that, and I've got clarification on that. So, the deeper the wound, the more that you're going to react. And in the same way, when you're in a relationship with a partner and they attack you, you have to understand where the attack is coming from. You got to remove yourself from the situation and go, this is not personal. This is a trigger for them. This is ingrained in them, because the focus is on us and protecting our heart and our vulnerability. They're going through the same thing, unless they're dealing with like maybe a narcissist. So that's a different story.
That's a different story. I have a whole lot about that, but the trigger thing is really interesting. In my last relationship, I didn't realize that, again, here we are in a situation that I didn't know was a trigger. So it was an issue with me, not with them, but I saw it as an issue with them. So they're not, I think the one that I recall the most is my ex was distracted for the week. Like it went on for days and days, very distracted, no pet names, no hi sweetie or sugar cakes or, none of that. All the text messages were very short. And I just felt like I was chopped liver. And so I kind of started to pull away because that's my trigger when that happens, and just insulate myself. And so at dinner, I was just kind of quiet and aloof. And he's like, well, what's going on? I go, I'm surprised that you're just now asking. You've been like, not treating me like you normally do for the last almost week now. And you just didn't even notice that I'd been just kind of not happy with things, but you were just so immersed in whatever was going on. I go, what's happening? Are you pulling away? Because he had the tendency to be an avoidant. We did the test. We read that book, Attached. Have you read the book, Attached?
No.
Oh, it's pretty intense, but it's all about attachment styles, and you're one of either 3 attachment styles: secure, avoidant, or anxious. And he tested avoidant, and I tested secure. So secure is, if you're an avoidant or an anxious, you want to be with somebody secure, and so it kind of evens them out. But him being an avoidant, his natural tendency is to pull away, and yeah. So,
and you knew that. Okay.
I knew that, but yes, and so, but it still triggered me. It would still trigger me. And so then I get upset. And so I realized through my relationship coach, when we looked back at that situation where it escalated, and then I got upset and angry. And then it was like, I don't do a yelling thing, and I don't get really angry. I just have a heart to heart that's pretty intense and real and raw. And he's like, oh, I'm sorry. I didn't realize I was doing that. I was just distracted, blah, blah, blah. And that was fine for the moment. But even as the evening went on, I was still in my wounded child. Is that normal?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Here's what I found, whenever, and I don't know anything about this guy, but I've always had men that, have you ever heard of the expression love bombing?
Yes. And I've only, I'm rolling my eyes because I'm so upset now that I know what that is. I realize the times that I was love bombed, and it effing sucks. And I would love to warn everybody about what that is and to be aware of it. Yeah.
So tell of it, because I'm sure a lot of people have never heard of it.
I will, hopefully I'll do my best, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, Tina, but love bombing is where you you find somebody, you guys connect, you have a great time together, there's wonderful chemistry, and they play into everything positive. They lift you up, they call you all the pet names, they say all the right things, they pour it on real thick. They might even talk marriage, they might talk meeting the family, just really, really thick. And then all of a sudden,
very soon,
like a whole lot, super soon. And then once you're all wrapped up in this, and you're excited and you're intoxicated, it's actually, I call it intoxication, because that love drug kicks in, the endorphins start kicking in. Now it's all, now you're connected and bonded with them in a certain way, and then they pull it back.
Yeah.
Am I right?
Yeah, absolutely. That's exactly what it is. It's like when you finally let down your wall and you finally decide to let them in, then they lose interest. Okay. And it's usually a narcissist that does this. Yeah. They lose interest because it's all about, them getting you to the place where you finally succumb to them. And it's the phone calls. And so the reason I brought that up was that is part of, like, I've always thought when somebody changes the pattern, okay? So it's hard, because if you've got somebody love bombing, you think about it, they can't keep that up forever. Okay.
Right. No, they can't.
And let's say somebody's not love bombing you, and they're not a narcissist. Okay. And they just feel so much. Maybe guys don't have a real good filter. They want to land you so badly. So they do that. And then the minute that you do that, the minute you fall for them, they start to pull back. So there's 2 things here. When somebody changes a pattern, that's when I sit there and I go, oh, whoa, what's going on? You're not that, I immediately go, you're not that interested anymore. Okay. But if you read have you ever read any of John Gray's book?
No.
His first one was called Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus.
Okay.
That was years and years and years ago. And that one, he talks about men. Okay. They're like rubber bands. They come on really strong, and then they pull back. They need to go in their cave. The worst thing you can do is when they're pulling back is go chase after them. That's just the way men are wired. Now, if you don't know this, you're going to say, it's me. Oh, they're cheating. They're this, or they're not that in love with me. You got to let them go. His newest book is Beyond Men Are From Mars and Women Are From Venus. And this is more in the 20th century and talking about, it's such an interesting book because he goes into now that women are more out on the workforce. And so when we're out there doing, working like men are too, we can run low on estrogen. Okay. And our true nature is nurtures, relationships. And because think about way back when women weren't working, they were nurturing their children, their home, their man. Okay. And men were out being the providers. The roles were very defined, but now that's not the case. So when a woman is out working really hard, she loses a lot of her testosterone. And so she can become kind of irritable and this and that. And men, because they're playing more of a part in the family dynamic and being more open with her heart and everything else, if a man does too much of that activity with a woman, they can start feeling like they can start to actually feel like they're not that interested anymore. And that's because they are not creating enough testosterone in their body. So ours is and he goes in to tell you, once you recognize this, there are ways, not getting a shot or anything, but there are ways, activities to create more estrogen in a woman. So it brings her back into balance, brings the relationship back into balance, and for men to create more testosterone. So it's just being aware of that, because otherwise, a man could go, I guess I'm just not that into her anymore. He doesn't understand what's going on. He's low on testosterone.
Interesting.
Yes. I mean, this is all about knowing yourself. You know yourself, then that's your greatest chance of having a successful relationship.
So if that happens to a man or a woman, what is a good way to check in with yourself and find out if it's not them, it's me? How do you
all the symptoms, all the signals are in his book. So if you know what those signals are, you can look and say, my body's not creating enough estrogen. Or he can go, my body's not producing enough testosterone, and this is what I need to do. I mean, who would ever have thought that, right?
No.
Right. And this is where it becomes, we were talking about toxicity earlier. This is where it becomes toxic, because it's all wonderful in the beginning. Right. But if you think about it also, life is all about change. The only constant thing in life is change. And, let's take a narcissist out of it. Let's take love bombing out of it. Okay. In the beginning, it's all, you're up in the clouds.
Totally.
That can't last in order to evolve. Okay. So somebody has to break the cycle. My last boyfriend had started pulling away, and I remember freaking out. But here's the craziest thing. I felt from day one, it was too much. And I didn't want to hurt his feelings. You know what I'm saying? It was like, well, if I tell him he's coming on too much, then I may just damage him so much that he's going to completely retreat. So I'll just stay with it. And in the end, he's the one who pulled away. When, I wasn't speaking my truth. And I should have allowed the cards to fall where they were going to fall. Because, if I would have spoken up earlier, we could have backed off a little bit. So my lesson from all this is that I'm very weary of somebody that comes on that strong. Yeah. I won't allow it to continue. I might be interested in you, but I'm going to back it up.
Good for you. That's great. I've learned that same lesson. I'm always going to be wary of anybody who comes on that strong going forward, because it doesn't need to happen that fast. In fact, it almost prevents you from getting to really know each other. And how are you going to really love somebody if you don't know all those stories and what makes them who they are? I went through that with a person who love bombed me. He never got to know my deep story. So how can you be talking marriage and all these things in a month and a half, that you don't meet?
That's a little premature, but you can get to know somebody if you're going that quickly. But, for me as a woman, I think it was from the lack of love from my father. So when somebody would do that, I'm like, finally, somebody realizes my worth. Right? Oh, finally, and oftentimes, they could be feeling it, could be true. Other times I have found that it's men that they rush in and it's almost like a distraction. because they are hiding something. Because if they've got you so distracted by gifts and this and calling you all the time, you don't have the space to kind of go,
huh? Yeah.
Right?
Are they okay for me? Are they what I'm looking for? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So
Mm-hmm.
what would be your advice for someone like me who's had to finally realize, oh my gosh, I needed to pull back from these long-term relationships and just do a ton of work on myself and look for all those things that I was looking for in a partner for myself and fulfill myself in that regard so that I'm already, as you said, whole going into it, so that the relationships I can just appreciate them for who they are. What would be your advice for someone like me, to approach the next situation? Let's say I'm dating and we've gone out on a date or two and we are attracted to each other and there's some chemistry. What would be a good rule of thumb at that point before you've slept together and gotten into the routine of dating constantly and calling each other boyfriend and girlfriend? What are some good things that I could take away to feel more secure that I've done my work to really assess this person and make sure that they could be right for me?
Well, you asked a lot of questions there.
Sorry.
So I'm trying to remember all the ones that you asked. Okay, so one, you were talking about sleeping with them and are they the right one for you? I would say, first of all, don't be attached to the outcome. Okay, I think we're all so attached to the outcome. You start dating somebody, and I'm telling you, all ladies that are listening to me are checking it off in their head. They're rhyming their name to their last name. They're how does that sound? Tina so and so, right?
Oh yeah.
Is this the one? Because you know what? Your friends don't help you because
they don't.
Well, do you think this is the one? Or how about like if you've been dating for 7 months or 9 months? Well, is he asking you to marry him yet? Or why aren't you engaged yet? And all of a sudden that's this light on you that you feel like, wow, is there something wrong with me? So it's all these head games. And I really believe, and in my book, Intimacy into You and Me, I see, it's not written just for romantic relationships. I truly believe that every relationship is there to teach you something about yourself. Most of them are not long-term, whether it's, a boyfriend or a marriage or a friendship or even family members. Okay. Because I've had to deal with that in my life. I, love my family, but, I'm not connected to all of them. And that was a deep, deep decision for me. That is this the best for my well-being? Not if like you said, if you've done the work and you really truly are whole, you're going to be choosing different people. Yeah. You're not going to be in such a rush. Okay. Sleeping together, that's a personal opinion. I think men, it's, I don't even think they take much of an account of it. And not like us. And I think we need as women to stop thinking that they take it as seriously as we do. So for me, I respect myself enough that I'm not sleeping with somebody unless there is some sort of commitment, unless it's my choice. And I go, I don't care where this goes.
Yeah. That's different.
Exactly. Yeah. But if I want this, if I really think this could go someplace and it's just not like a whatever fantasy land, then I want that commitment. I think a lot of women do it backwards. They sleep with them first and then they want the commitment. It's like, and then they blame the guy and point the finger at the guy. Well, it's not the guy's fault.
Yeah. I'm so glad you mentioned that.
We're not wired like that. A man can really love you and he still has a desire to sleep with other people. And that used to break my heart too. It's like if a guy would even look at somebody else, that's how they're wired, ladies. I mean, that's the difference. Sometimes I sit there and I go, I don't even know how men and women get together.
I know. It's so true. I don't understand. Why do guys even go through with it on their end if they're wired that way? It shocks me when they are.
Because their need to have sex, they will do anything. I mean, seriously, that need, and I know this because I have brothers and I have guy friends and they're very open about that. And it's almost like that is an insatiable need that they need to either get in touch with and go, I need to learn how to like back off of that, or, because that can get them in a lot of trouble too. The pain after when you've scorned a woman by misleading her or this and that. And just because a woman is not asking for a commitment doesn't mean she's not going to be scorned and be pissed off at you. Okay. So any men that are listening, if you are going to do that and you are going to take a chance, unless you say, hey, listen, are we on the same page? We're just going to have fun tonight. I just want to make sure. But a lot of guys.
Oh my gosh. If they would only all do that. Hey, are we on the same page? I'm in for just having a good time tonight. That's where my head's at. I don't know where this is going to go. I wish they would all do that because it would.
That's an evolved man, though. Most men are not, and I'm not even saying most men, because I'm not here to bash men, but I think a lot of men are not realized enough. And so, the two heads. Which one's going to win?
Or it's, I don't really care. I just want to
get laid. Because this need is so strong.
That's right.
Right? That I don't care. And that leads to, eventually a life of loneliness, because I really do believe men want a deep connection as well. Right? So, but it's our responsibility also, maybe if they're not saying it and you're in that position, then you vocalize it. Hey, are you just in this for fun? Or, because that's not what I'm looking for. And, I read on your website about talking about masks that we wear. Well, a lot of women, and I did this, I've done everything in my life, but I remember putting on this mask of presenting myself of what I thought they wanted.
Of course. I think all of us have done that. Yeah.
Yeah. So, the more that you start to love yourself, the less you will do that. And the more that you will be respected as well.
That's the key. The more you'll be respected, the more you love yourself, and you do it for yourself, not for them. When you go, I can't tell you how many times in my younger years, friends were constantly giving advice on, do this because guys like that. If you want a guy to like you, wear this. Oh, Jenna, you should wear something a little bit tighter fitting because guys like that. It's like, if I'm constantly altering myself and putting myself forward for a guy to like me, that's self-denial almost.
Well, you're getting further and further away from yourself. And here's what I've always said. If you do that, if it works out, great. But first of all, your real self's going to come out. I mean, somebody can only really kind of hide behind their mask 6 to 9 months. Then the real person comes out. And I can't stand when people do that to me. So you just wasted my time.
Totally.
But here's the other thing. You're going to be extra hard on yourself, because when it doesn't work out, it's not going to work out because you can't keep the mask up that long. And then you're going to say, I wonder what it'd like if I was just me. Maybe he really would have liked me. See what I'm saying? So you've got a much better shot of just being authentic and who you are. And if they don't like it, move on and say, hey, every pot has a lid. I'll find my lid. This wasn't for me. And then that's what I've seen in my book. Look, instead of getting caught up in the pain of the breakup that it didn't work out, find the reason it happened. You can always find a reason in every situation, a golden nugget of what you got out of it. But instead, we're looking at all the reasons why they broke up with us, what's wrong with us. No, there's nothing wrong with you. Look for the lesson. If you look for the lesson, then it's a success. Otherwise, it is a failure.
That is a wonderful note to leave this on, because that's always true for me. Look for the lesson in everything, whether it's heartbreak, whether it's a relationship that didn't work out, a business thing that didn't work out or did work. You always look for the lesson, because that's what everything is there to teach us. And you can always transmute a negative situation into something positive if you can learn the lesson. Now, how do you learn it? That I find personally through a lot of contemplation, a lot of self-reflection, meditation. And at some point it kind of hits you like an epiphany and you're like, oh, okay, I got it. And sometimes it takes journaling, sometimes talking to
excellent.
Coaching,
excellent. Yeah.
A therapist or a relationship coach, but sometimes it really helps having that mirror. And I'm sure you do that for a lot of your clients, serve in that regard for your clients as a mirror, right? Yeah. And so sometimes it'll come out from you just by talking to someone who can mirror back to you yourself. So yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I'm an open book with my clients. I share, if they're going through something, I'll share a story that I did it, so it doesn't make them feel so alone. I mean, that's the thing. None of us want to feel alone. We all want to feel like, there's not something wrong with us. There's nothing. There's just wounds that need to be healed. There's nothing
wrong with us, right? All of us, I think, are perfect as we are. We just have our lessons to learn for ourselves, but we cannot judge ourselves by the external world or what we think they think of us. We have to just love ourselves and accept ourselves for what we are, flaws and all. We are a work in progress, right?
Exactly.
Awesome.
Okay.
Tina, well, it was so lovely having you here on the show today. Thank you so
My
much for joining.
pleasure. It was fun. Yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome. And I encourage everyone to go check out Transparent with Tina, her podcast. You can see it on her IG Instagram page, which is, what is your Instagram handle?
It's Tina Marx, Marx. Yeah.
And her website is Transparent with Tina, which you can also watch the videos there or listen to the podcast. And that's it. Again, thank you so much, Tina. Hope to have you back someday.
Thank you. I'd love it.
Awesome. Okay. Good night.